but they just let you know who these. You probably know somebody. You know Dr. Ben Carson, one of the first black neurosurgeons who separated a brain from a black man. Yes, so that's another history of black people. We need to look up this man and whatever like that. You know, and I've done a lot of sent out a lot of things on the other side of Black history, but that's another story. But Ben Carson, Glenn Beck, these are some of the guys that read the book all the way through and they see it coming through fruition. You don't have to listen to them, but this is just concrete proof. Okay, let me stop babbling. Let's get back at it.
J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation for 37 years, never endorsed books, but came close when he said, "I feel certain that your efforts on this important subject, communism, will receive widespread attention and consideration."
Now here is the 45 goals for communists.
Current communist goals. 1. U.S. acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. 2. U.S. willingness to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war. 3. Develop the illusion that total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength.
Okay, I'm gonna stop on that one. Now that probably, if you're not familiar with that, all right, under the couple of administrations before Trump, administration before Trump was the Obama administration, and if you notice, remember, Obama made a kind of a law, maybe even executive order to try to disarm the United States. You know, in a way, what he was saying, you know, we need to get rid of a lot of nuclear weapons, which sounds good. We need to get rid of a lot of nuclear weapons, and we need to disarm ourselves because it will look good for everybody else, and it was showing that we're not even, whatever like that. I'm just paraphrasing right there. But remember, when they started disarming all these weapons and everything, all the other nations was lifting up or making more powerful weapons while the United States was disarming the weapons. That was part of the setup, okay? So that was part of the setup. We started disarming our weapons, led by the administration before last, the Obama administration, and, you know, they started disarming the United States weapons, you know, to leave us a little weaker than the other nations. And if you notice, China started getting stronger, Russia started getting stronger, Iran started, you know, building their bombs. Iran was granted a 500 billion whatever. It wasn't a loan, but it was a 500 billion grant or whatever to Iran. The Obama administration granted that to Iran. And, you know, I would say, why would you give 500 billion to a terrorist nation that hates your nation? But that's another story. But that was part of the plan to disarming the United States, and that happened under the administration before. Literally, that happened. Let me continue.
Permit free trade between all nations, regardless of communist affiliation, and regardless of whether or not items could be used for war.
That's self-explanatory.
5. Extension of long-term loans to Russia and Soviet satellites. 6.
Okay, all right. Why would you make all these loans to Russia for their satellites? Now, at that time, that haven't happened yet. But what was going on was, you know, that was just part of their plan. Remember, this was a plan. A lot of this stuff has already came to fruition. It is already in play. So I'm just letting you know, all of this a lot of this already came in play already since the 2000s. But it was predicted back, and that's what they was going to do. But listen to some of this other stuff, and I'm gonna try not to interrupt. And the ones that I do speak up about, I'm just going to give a little clarification and everything. But you should understand what I'm talking about because it's happening right under your eyes if you're paying attention, church. Here we go.
Provide American aid to all nations regardless of communist domination.
Mm-hmm.
7. Grant recognition of Red China. Admission of Red China to the UN.
Okay,
8.
That happened under Bill Clinton. Yep, that happened under the Clinton administration, but that was planned way back then. They wanted to do that. That already happened to Clinton. They welcomed the Red China into the United Nations, and China started buying out a lot of things in America, and we owe a lot of debt to China right now. I don't know too much about that, but basically, I know that much. We owe a lot of debt for China. They let China hands in, and I mentioned that before. China hands is in everything now, and they always wanted to be the number one superpower, them and Russia, and they're on their way. If we keep giving in to them and keep going this way. Okay, so Red China is already in the United Nations. Has already been fulfilled.
set up East and West Germany as separate states, in spite of Khrushchev's promise in 1955 to settle the Germany question by free elections under the supervision of the UN. 9. Prolong the conferences to ban atomic tests because the U.S. has agreed to suspend tests as long as negotiations are in progress.
Okay.
10. Allow all Soviet satellites individual representation in the UN. 11. Promote the UN as the only hope for mankind. If its charter is rewritten, demand that it be set up as a...
You hear that? Now, if you don't know what the UN is the United Nations, the United World Nations. They're a bunch of groups of different nations and everything. They want to be, back then they wanted to set up the United Nations and run the whole world. You know, make them the ones, the saviors, make them the Messiah, make them the God. And all that almost came to fruition before Trump came in. Now, I'm not saying lifting up Trump or nothing like that, but he was fighting against that. You cannot deny that. He took a lot of less of the power from the United Nations. But, you know, under this administration now, and under the previous administration before that, then the United States is getting weak, and they was handing over a lot of things to the United Nations because of this communist movement. This is an agenda. Let me continue.
One world government with its own independent armed forces. Some communist leaders believe the world can be taken over as easily by the UN as by Moscow.
Okay.
Sometimes these two centers compete with each other, as they are now doing in the Congo.
Okay.
12. Resist any attempt to outlaw the Communist Party.
Don't mess with the Communist Party.
13. Do away with all loyalty oaths.
Forget loyalty. That
14.
means nothing.
Continue giving Russia access to the U.S. Patent Office. 15. Capture one or both of the political parties in the United States.
Okay, you heard that? Capture one or both. That was the plan. United States, Republican and Democrat. Those are the two parties. Catch one or both. All they need was one party to catch, you know, or both. They caught one party now, the Democratic Party. Yes, if you're a Democrat, I'm sorry, your party has been bought. They caught the Democratic Party, and they caught partial of the Republican Party. Half of the Republican Party, or even more, is going to towards communism and left themselves. So they got mostly all the Democrats, the top leaders. I'm not talking about the individual people that votes for them. I'm talking about the top leaders and everything. They got the Democratic Party, you know, the founders of the KKK. They got the Democratic Party, and they got part of the Republican Party. So both of them been stricken with evil.
16. Use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. 17. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist...
You heard that? That's kind of self-explanatory. You go to the schools right now. You see what they teaching in schools. You know what they teaching in schools. Or do you know? Well, if you don't know church... if you got kids or grandkids in there, find out what your kids are being taught. It's better to put them in a private school, in the Christian school if you can afford it, but in a private school, you know, because your kids are getting taught right now, today. Homosexuality is all right. Same-sex agenda is okay. They're getting taught stuff like that. They're getting taught that racism. To be racist, hate the whites. Even white kids are getting taught to hate whites. You know, the blacks are oppressed. The blacks are always oppressed. The blacks are always going to need the whites' help, but at the same time hate whites. They don't say it in that way, but look what your kids are being taught. You got teachers fighting today. I just looked at a few of them fighting today because of what their kids are being taught in school by these left communists. And I ain't talking about everybody, but they know who they are. Okay, let me continue.
Propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations. Put the party line in textbooks. 18. Gain control of all...
Put party line in textbooks. What party line? The Democratic Party. All these agendas has been passed because of the Democratic Party. The upper echelons, your Pelosi's, your Schumers, and all them up top. You know, they use Biden for their puppet. I really believe that. They're the ones putting it out there. Like I said, I might get sensitive, but, you know, the truth, I'm going to tell the truth. You know, for what I know. I don't know everything, but I'm not very educated. I didn't even finish high school. But, man, this is common sense. This has been planned for years. You could see it coming to fruition, man. You can see it coming to fruition. You just need to open up your spiritual eyes, people, okay? Check out what's going on in your school. Stop voting for this party. You just don't vote for no party, but find out what your party stand or vote for. I can give you a list. And you look at both sides of what both parties stand for. The Republicans is not standing on the things what they stood on years ago, when Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln and all of them. But they stand on still better principles and more moral principles and godly principles than the Democratic Party. If you read both of their beliefs and what they stand for, especially Democratic Party the other day, you will see that. It's not hidden what they believe in. And then you go back the laws they pass. Okay, in your own community. Stop being blind. Open up those blinders, Come on, y'all.
All student newspapers. 19. Use student riots to foment public protests against programs or organizations which are under
Okay, you see, the riots been going on in the streets. Now, this is an agenda now. I keep interrupting because this was back in the 30s. This was an agenda that they was planning from the Communist Party how to take over the United States. You notice all these riots. You notice all these protests, these tearing up buildings. It ain't got nothing to do with George Floyd and none of that. This is just an agenda to even kick that off. BLM, Antifa, all these groups, riots, tearing up buildings. That was part of the communist movement. It was planned. So it got nothing to do with these individuals getting shot and anything. They don't care about black people, but they use black people as a pawn to get their agenda through. Real talk.
Communist attack. 20. Infiltrate the press. Get control of book review assignments, editorial
the media
writing,
tucking over. We already know that, the fake media.
21. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures.
You see that?
22. Continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression.
Now listen to this. Listen to this. Fossey, what they mean by that? I'm just say, Joe, I'm interrupting so I can try to, interpret what they're saying if you don't understand. I'm not saying nobody dumb and nothing like that, but some people they hear but they don't hear. It says continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. Now, what that mean? They're going to start making weird, ugly expressions, okay? An American Communist cell was told to eliminate all good sculpture, and I'm quoting from the book, from parks and buildings, substitutes in shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. Which meaning, here in Chicago, I ain't talking about nowhere else, but here in Chicago, if you go downtown, even when I worked downtown, I used to wonder, man, all these ugly, strange-looking forms that don't make sense. Man standing up with heads hanging over their neck, over the backwards of their back. You got these strange statues. You got these paintings that don't make sense. They look weird. They look evil, and they don't make no sense to people. Come and visit these things and don't even know what they are. They try to explain what the art means, but it doesn't make any sense. When I worked at the convention center, they had all this weird stuff and all that. It didn't mean nothing to me. You look at the cloud. That big silver thing look like a big old. They call it a big old cloud or like a teardrop or whatever. Downtown, they call it the beam at the Millennium Park. You look at that. What's the purpose of that? What's the meaning? It doesn't make any sense. But an artist can explain that. But the normal person don't make any sense. But it's famous. People take their pictures and everything. It's a lot of ugly art, like they said. That was formed purposely for one reason or another, man. Check out. People wake up. Look at all this crazy stuff.
Communist cell was told to eliminate all good sculpture from parks and buildings. Good sculpture,
take them away.
Substitute shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms.
Like I said, that's happening.
23. Control art critics and directors of art museums. Our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsive, meaningless art.
You hear that?
24. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press.
Now tell me that ain't happening today. Censorship. You got to watch what you say. You get on Facebook, even Twitter. You get on Facebook. You got to watch what you say. And they know which ones are censored when it goes against the status quo. When you speak certain things they don't want you to say, they say, no, we're going to fact check you. You don't have the right to say that. That's wrong. We fact check you. Your opinion don't mean nothing. So we're going to censor you. You're in violation of free speech. They're violating your free speech. They take away your First Amendment and everything, So if you notice you've been censoring Facebook,